I've really had it on my mind over the last several days to do a video on really deconstructing this idea that churches of Christ are the church that is found in the book of Acts. And it has not really set well with me, the approach of deconstructing that. And instead, I would really want to have a conversation about what the church in Acts looks like in more of an encouraging, positive sense, as a challenge to us to say, let's live more into that. Let's press more into that. And the place I want to start is Acts chapter 1, verse 8. Jesus says, "You will be my witnesses, starting here in Jerusalem, going to the very ends of the earth." We have a mission to our neighbors, to our communities, to our neighborhoods, to our city, to our county, to our region. Often when you look at a missions budget, break that thing down and just look and see where the money is going. Is it all international, or is there any local effort that is going on? We need to have a Jerusalem mission just as much as we need to have an ends of the earth mission. We move on to Acts chapter 2. And what we see in Acts chapter 2 is an amazingly powerful move of the Holy Spirit. There is an absolute reliance in the church in Acts on the movement of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is mentioned working like 57 times in the book of Acts. The book of Acts is just an exposition on the work of the Holy Spirit in the early church. If we want to be like the early church, if we want to embrace what they embraced, we need to embrace the work and the power of the Holy Spirit. The next thing we see is bold gospel proclamation. Peter delivers this sermon. Later, Paul will deliver sermons. Peter will deliver more sermons in the book of Acts. But there is consistent, bold gospel proclamation. Go back through and read these sermons and see the kind of things that the apostles were teaching and pointing out to those who needed Jesus to bring them to faith, to bring them to conversion and salvation. Bold gospel proclamation. And then we see what's called the fellowship of believers in Acts chapter 2, 42 to 47. And there's some things in there we can certainly learn from. They had an insatiable desire to be together. This was not about just being there when the doors were open. They didn't have church buildings. They were meeting together daily. Not only that, but they had a deep and profound interest in each other's well-being. So much so that they were willing to sell possessions, which we see in Acts 2 and Acts 5, and give sacrificially to those who had need. So as it says later in Acts 5, that there was not anyone who was needy among them, because they were selling fields and selling their possessions to give to one another to make sure that everybody in that community was provided for and was loved and taken care of. In Acts chapter 3, starts again with the powerful move of the Holy Spirit. Following that is bold gospel proclamation. You watch and see God work. You use that as an opportunity to proclaim the good news about Jesus. So the next thing you see coming into Acts 4 is persecution and suffering. If you really want to be like the church in Acts, there's going to be persecution and suffering. It is all over the book of Acts. It's here, it's in Paul's missionary journeys, it's in Acts 7 with the stoning of Stephen. And the stoning of Stephen, again, comes from bold gospel proclamation that is rooted in the history of God's people, Israel, and is fulfilled in Jesus Christ, and is the message of hope through the resurrection of Christ, the forgiveness of sins, and reconciliation, and being brought into an amazing family of faith. It is preached all through the book of Acts. So there is tremendous persecution in the book of Acts. There is suffering in the book of Acts. People are being beaten because of this gospel proclamation. Because when you proclaim the gospel, the powers that be will often feel very threatened by that, whether it's religious authorities or secular authorities. But if we're not proclaiming the gospel in bold and profound ways, and even in public ways, then we have really some work to do. In the book of Acts, they were out among people. They were doing this proclamation in public spaces in Acts 2 and Acts 3. Later on, Acts 16, 17, and beyond with the missionary journeys. They were in public spaces telling people the good news about Jesus. In today's world, the only way you know the church is there is seeing a building. But the church has never been the building. The church is the people and the proclamation and the kingdom message, this good news about Jesus. We see this after the stoning of Stephen coming into Acts 8, that the church was being persecuted and scattered over this message about Jesus, that people felt threatened about that, and they came after the church, and the church scattered, and ordinary people took the message of the kingdom with them, and they spread it everywhere they went. Has your church ever been so gospel proclaiming that you have faced persecution for that in a way that you had to shut the doors of your church, not because of pandemic, but because the world was after you? So you just kind of had to go back home and kind of lay low for a while. Like the church in Acts find themselves in that position multiple times where persecution comes, and the believers have to gather together, like in Acts 4, and begin praying boldly And then at the end of Acts 4, we see this amazing movement of the Holy Spirit. And Acts 9 is the conversion of Saul, that God can change anyone's heart. If we're the church in Acts, we should really be praying for the enemies of our faith, not going after them on social media, not blasting them on social media. We should be praying for the enemies of our faith, for God to convert them and bring them into the fold as an amazing movement of the Lord to bring the hardest of hearts into proximity with the Prince of Peace, so that the world can see what a change has happened to people who were bold persecutors of the way, become believers, become disciples. We need to be going down the list of people who are the most antagonistic to the Christian faith, both locally and on the world stage, and be praying for their conversion so that the world can see the power of the gospel. In Acts 10, we have this cross-cultural engagement between Jews and Gentiles and bringing people into the fold, which makes other people very uncomfortable. The Church of God in Acts is a multicultural church, and it brings in people from the margins and puts them right in the middle as equal co-sharers and participants in the kingdom with everybody else. It's a beautiful thing. So are our churches multi-ethnic? Do they welcome people who are outsiders? Do we bring people in and share and fellowship with them? There's a whole chapter of the book of Acts just devoted to explaining what happened when Peter crossed ethnic and religious lines. That's Acts chapter 11. Acts chapter 12, there's even more suffering. There's even more persecution. Acts chapter 13 is a lesson in how to select people to send on mission. They select Paul and Barnabas by fasting and prayer. And they wait and fast and pray and wait and fast and pray until the Holy Spirit selects Paul and Barnabas and says to them, audibly apparently, who it is that they're supposed to send. We need to be listening for the movement of God, to be in step with what it is that God is doing. Look at our missionary practices and how we select missionaries. Often there's a solicitation that comes, would you be a supporting church? And maybe that church enters into a business conversation or a prayerful conversation. But have you ever seen fasting and prayer and a weight of the movement of God through God to show us and reveal to us whether this is a yes or a no in supporting a missionary work or someone overseas? I've never seen that process yet. That is a clear example in Acts chapter 13. Acts chapter 14, the question I have there is, when was the last time that you and I shared the gospel with a lost person, someone who really truly needed to hear that? It's all over Acts chapter 14 on this missionary journey. They're going out among the people. They're not just doing attractional church, calling people to big events and big programs and amazing children's ministry and this great young adult thing and this amazing preacher. They are going out, just like Jesus said in the Great Commission in Acts 1:8, to go and be these witnesses and start where you are and move out. They're starting to reach out into the ends of the earth now, just like Jesus said they would. But are we going? Are we proclaiming? Do we know what to proclaim? Do we know that message? Are we amongst the people who need to hear it? Do we find inroads into having those conversations? That's Acts chapter 14. Acts chapter 15 brings up the question, the Council of Jerusalem. Have you ever crossed a line that caused someone to call a council to address what it is that you did because you stirred people up and people were left with questions? In Acts 16, they go to Philippi and they go to a place that they think may be agreeable to the gospel. I mean, they're just smart about their strategy. They go to a place of prayer and they find Lydia there and they interact with her. They don't wait for her to bring things up. They just interact with her. And she and her entire household were baptized. When was the last time in your church that a whole household came forward and was baptized? And maybe the reason that doesn't happen is because we're opening the doors of the church, holding a worship service, hoping that lost people will see the sign and go, hey, that church must be for me. Walk in, hear a message that's not about the gospel. It's about marriage and divorce or about instrumental music or about something else. And they think, well, this church must be for me. And I just really believe in this Jesus that I haven't heard about this morning. And so count me in. I must then be baptized because I heard that at the end of the sermon. I'm going to do that. Well, that's not a very good approach. That's why we're not seeing whole families baptized, because we're not doing what Paul did, which was see ourselves as missionaries, go interact with people who need to hear it, expect that God, just like it says in Acts 16, might well open up hearts. And we need to be looking for the people who God's opening hearts and engaging them. We're engaging all kinds of people, and you will eventually run into the people whose hearts are open and you engage them with the message. You may well convert a whole household. It happens twice in Acts 16. It happens with the Philippian jailer because Paul and Silas are persecuted for this message. Get ready for that, by the way, if you're going to share the message, although most people are incredibly kind when you evangelize people out in the world and go and approach them and talk to them. Incredibly kind. Very few belligerent, antagonistic people out there. But they baptized 2 whole households in Philippi because they went and because they saw opportunity. In Acts 17, same thing, more proclamation, more trouble. In Acts 18, they go into Corinth and they convert people. They baptize them. They make disciples. They establish churches. We could keep going through the whole book of Acts into Jerusalem and the trial of Paul and all this. But the point I want to make is that this church, this Acts-based church, is a church of reliance on the Holy Spirit. It is a church that is going on mission. It is a church that knows the gospel message, the good news of Jesus. What is the core message? They are proclaiming that message to the people who they have gone to, not built a program and hope that people would get the flyer and say, that's for me, and walk in the door and be baptized, and then somehow get discipled, and then somehow grow in maturity, and then somehow reach more people. If that's not happening, which it's not in most churches, we have to ask ourselves, why is this not happening? And then begin taking the steps to do what works based on the biblical example, right? So we need to be people who are absolutely reliant on the movement of the Spirit. Of the 57 times it says in the book of Acts that the Spirit moved them, the Spirit speaks to them. And I didn't even address at Acts 8 with Philip and the Ethiopian. It says an angel told him to go a certain place, and then as he started to go, the Spirit led him into that conversation. Okay? So we need to be open to these things. We need to be anticipating these things and then participating in these things. We need to be a church on mission, a church of bold gospel proclamation. And yes, you may suffer for that. There is a desire on their part to be together. There was a desire to meet each other's needs, to give sacrificially, to love well. This is the church in Acts. And if we want to be that kind of church, these are the kind of things that we need to be participating in. And it's really hard to make the claim that we're that church because we pulled out one phrase from Acts chapter 2, 42 to 47, which says that they devoted themselves, that they were meeting together daily, devoting themselves to the prayers, to the apostolic teaching. That's the one piece of this, giving sacrificially, et cetera, all these things they were doing. But we've said we are a sound church because we have imitated and proclaimed the apostolic teaching. Okay? We've done that somewhat in-house with each other, although I'd say we've missed on a few points. Again, I'm not trying to be critical in this video. That's not really my point. I'm trying to more encourage and inspire than admonish. But what about all the other parts of Acts chapter 2, 42 to 47? A desire to be together instead of a guilt trip of Hebrews 10:25 to arm twist people into being there. There was such a great desire because God was so working in powerful ways, and they wanted to be together. They wanted to hear these teachings. They wanted to pray together. They couldn't resist being together and giving for each other and loving each other and eating together, breaking of bread in Acts 2, 42 to 47. These were the kind of things they were doing. And so if we want to make the claim that we're that kind of church, then let's be that kind of church. Let's go in all the way on being that kind of church where everyday people are on everyday mission, proclaiming the message of Jesus and maybe having some kind of cost for doing so, but also yet winning people to the Lord, bringing them to faith, baptizing them into Christ, making disciples out of them, planting new churches. I mean, this is the church in Acts, and it grew and grew and grew. There's a book that I've just been reading called The Rise of Christianity by Rodney Stark. And it's a really great book on the growth of the early Christian movement and what kind of growth that they saw and how it took some time for things to kind of catalyze and then begin to grow exponentially. But we can see that if we follow Christ's example, if we lean into the work of the Spirit, if we truly desire to be a family of faith that wants to be together and wants to love each other and wants to give to each other and is out there on mission and serving and evangelizing together, this is not just about painting more houses. This is about engaging people's souls with the message of good news to bring them into relationship with their Creator, to bring them reconciliation. It's so exciting. And I hope it's an absolute encouragement to you to lean into Acts. If you want to make that statement, we're this church in Acts. Let's lean into the church in Acts then. Let's do what they were doing. Let's participate in what they were participating in. And let's watch God bring the growth because we can't make it grow. Only God can make it grow. So thanks again for watching this. Love you and appreciate you. Share it with a friend. And we'll talk again soon. Take care.